fuck.
Yeah, no, I'm CST. Also, the model is out of use right now. Yes, that is correct. All right. So the model is out of use because I wanted to use my camera to show something a little different today. I wanted to show you guys the book I am reading from. This is old. It has been little loved. Even the encyclopedia is so used. But we have one little section that we are reading from. It might be mirrored, but it is this right here. It is Loki's Quarrel. And the reason we are using this, because of the amount of minor Nordic gods that it actually introduces. First, I want to like double check. I want to see how is my audio level to the music level. Also, I wanted to play this. Oh, there we go. Seems fine, nearly the same. Let's turn the music down a little bit. There we go. Alright. There is one thing I have to do because I had to reset my filters. Hi, spouse. Cherry been here. Cherry just lurking. Whoa, hello. That was supposed to go underneath the slideshow. Haha. You know what? Fuck it. I don't have pictures for this one. Oh no, a man, I know. Men are scary. Alright. Akiri is currently scratching at the door because I won't let him in during this. You men. Alright. My face is completely red right now. Alrighty. Alright, we apparently don't have images. That's fine. We didn't come here to look at pictures. We came here for story time. Alright. So we are reading today from Loki's Scroll to get an introduction of some minor Nordic gods. Now, I did put out a post on Twitter for this. It only got 5 votes, but you know, my topic of choice is 1, so we're good. This is fine. It worked out perfectly. All right. So, I haven't done one of these in quite some time. Not since COVID, actually. So forgive me if I stumble over, my pacing is off. I haven't done one of these in a while. Anyways, so I played a soundbite. Cherry did indeed play a soundbite. Cherry played fuck. Alright. But so everyone knows about Ragnarok. You know, the Twilight of the Gods. It has many familiar faces. Loki, Odin, Thor. But the events that lead up to Ragnarok introduces some less familiar ones. which is why I am reading Loki's Quarrel. Well, Loki's Quarrel is one of those events that kind of led up to it, you know, because trickster god, all that. He's he didn't make many friends. But no, so some of these deities in this have more stories than others, and some only have a few stanzas in poetry. Rest in peace, most of the stories that were passed down. But anyways, no. So that brings us to Loki's Quarrel. Now, Loki's Quarrel introduces many smaller deities that I thought would be fun to cover. However, I did not put enough time into planning this. I wanted to do something small for the YouTubes. So I decided to give this a bit of a read, and also during it gave you guys a bit of history of some of the figures within, some of the backgrounds, little origins, because even though some of them don't have as much, they have enough to kind of gain a bit of understanding of who they were and why they shaped so much. But yeah, no. So, Loki's Quarrel. Fair warning, the Poetic Edda can get a bit wordy. We're talking Tolkien levels. But, here we go. Excluded from the feast at Aegir's Hall, where all other gods except Thor are celebrating, Loki forces his way in, compels Odin to assign him a seat, and insults each of the gods and goddesses in turn. Hence the title Loki's Quarrel, or Lokasenna. No one escapes his scorn, and it is only when Thor returns from journeying in Giant Land and threatens Loki with his hammer that Loki falls silent and consents to leave. About Aegir and the gods. Aegir, who is also called Gymir, had brewed ale for the Aesir. Now, a bit of background on Aegir. Aegir is the god, he's also known as Garant, and is one of the sea gods and a giant at that, and a god of hospitality. He was known for actually hosting lavish feasts, that much like the one that Loki is attending. This one in particular, Thor had sought out a cauldron to brew mead big enough for all the gods. The dining hall was said to have been, the floors were said to have been made in gold. And if you look very deep enough at, gold itself, you will notice that there is actually a small nickname that gold has. It's called Aegir's Light. It's literally just a representation of him rather than wealth. That's pretty cool. I don't know. So Aegir, who is also called Gymir, had brewed an ale for the Aesir. When he got the great cauldron, which has just been told about, to this feast came Odin and Frigg, his wife. Thor did not come because he was away in the east. Sif was there, Thor's wife, Bragi, and Idun, his wife. Tyr was there, he was one-handed, for Fenrir, the wolf, tore his hand off when he was bound. There was Njord and his wife, Skadi, Freyr and Freya, Vidar, son of Odin. Loki was also there, and the servants of Freyr, Bigvir and Bela. Many of the Aesir and elves were also there. Aegir had two servants, Fimafeng and Eldir. Shining gold was used instead of firelight. Ale went round by itself. That was a great place of peace. People praised the excellence of Aegir's servers. Loki could not bear to hear that, and so he killed Fimafeng. Then the Aesir shook their shields and shrieked at Loki and chased him out into the woods, and they set to drinking. But Loki came back and met Eldir outside. Now Eldir is one of the servants. Loki greeted him. Tell me, Eldir, before you step up a single foot forward, what the sons of the victory gods here inside talk about over their ale. Eldir said, they discussed their weapons and their readiness for war, the sons of victory gods, among the Aesir and elves who are within. No one has a friendly word for you. Yeah, Loki didn't make many friends. Loki said, in I shall go into Aegir's halls to have a look at that feast. Quarreling and strife I'll bring to the Aesir's sons, and thus mix their mead with malice. Elder said, you know, if you go into Aegir's halls to have a look at that feast, if accusation and scandal you pour over the loyal gods, they'll wipe it off on you. Loki said, you know, Eldir, that if you and I should contend with wounding words, I'll be rich in my replies when you say too much. Afterwards, Loki went into the hall, and when those inside saw who had come in, they all fell silent. Loki said, thirsty I come to this hall, Loki come a long way, to ask the Aesir that they should give me one drink of magnificent mead. Why are you so silent, you pride-swollen gods, that you are unable to speak? Assign me a place to sit at the feast, or tell me to go away. Bragi said, a place to sit at the feast, the Aesir will never assign you, for the Aesir know for whom they provide their potent feast. Bragi is one of my favorite gods to talk about. Also, hello, Matt. Hello, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've done a stream. Yes, I know. The most known bartending ingredient, yes. But anyways, no, Bragi. Bragi is an interesting character for a few reasons. He is one of Odin's sons. He was one of the gods of wisdom, particularly the god of poetry and music. He's mentioned very little in terms of stories, but he has a big foundation in Nordic mythology for one reason. They prided themselves as much with songs, sagas, and tales as they did a battle and swords. He was said to have been so wise that his eyes held secrets, while his features remained calm and serene. He also had long flowing hair, blonde hair, mind you, Fabio style, and wise but youthful features. Personally, I'd attribute that to his wife Idun, but you know, looks are looks. And he was also Odin's son, so he might have gotten off on a good foot. Loki said, do you remember Odin, when in bygone days we blended our blood together? Blood brothers, quite literally. You said you'd never imbibe beer unless it was brought to both of us, saying that Odin would never drink without Loki. Odin said, get up then, Vidar, and let the wolf's father sit down at the feast, lest Loki speak words of blame to us in Aegir's hall. And then Vidar stood up and poured a drink for Loki, and before he drank, he toasted to the Aesir. Hail to the Aesir, hail to the Asinor, and all the most sacred gods. I might have pronounced that last one wrong. Except for the one god who sits further in, Bragi on the benches. He calling Bragi a coward. And Bragi said, a horse and a sword I'll give you for my possessions, and Bragi will recompense you with the ring too, so you don't pay the Aesir with hatred. Don't make the gods exasperated with you. And Loki said, both horses and arms ring you'll always be short of Bragi, of the Aesir and the elves who are in here. You're the wariest of war and shyest of shooting, again calling him a coward. Bragi said, I know if I were outside just as now as I am inside Aegir's hall, your head I'll be holding in my hand. I'll see that as reward for your lies. Loki said, you're brave in your seat, but you won't be doing that. Bragi the bench ornament, you go and fight if you're so furious. The truly bold man doesn't think twice. Yeah, no, he's actually stirring up a lot of trouble, and he started with Bragi. You know, one of the wisest and calmest of gods, who really doesn't like to kill people much. Though we do have an exception here, because Idun said, I beg you, Bragi, that kin ties will hold between the children and those who are adopted, so you shouldn't speak words of blame to Loki in Aegir's hall. Trying to calm down her husband. Idun is the goddess of youth, and particularly her apples are what brings the youth to the gods, and is the source of one of the many misadventures of Loki that actually went up to Ragnarok. Loki kidnapped her, and I believe it was either a troll or a giant that he gave her to. And he had to borrow one of Freya's cloaks, the one that turns him into an eagle, just to save her and get her back, because the gods were starting to age without her apples. So why she's defending him now, I don't know. But to put it simply, Idun here right now is just trying to calm Bragi before a fight actually breaks out. Now, Loki goes on to say, "Be silent, Idun. I declare that of all women, you're the most man-mad, since you wound your arms washed bright around your brother's killer." So, when Loki says that she practically lies with her brother's slayer, it's implied that Bragi killed her brother. And now I'm not certain as to who her brother was. That's something that I do have to look up, and something I can actually find something on, because I actually don't know a whole lot about Idun. Idun said, "I'm not speaking words of blame to Loki. In Aegir's hall, I am quieting Bragi, made talkative with beer. I don't want you two angry men to fight." And then we get an interjection from a character that I actually couldn't find anything on. It turns out she only has a few stanzas, and her name is Gefjon. Now, here we have it. No, she has very few words written about. She has a couple stanzas in the Poetic Edda and a bit of origin story in the Prose Edda. So there's not a whole lot to go off of, and frankly, Denmark opened up an AI data center, then slapped her name on it. Why they're naming it after her, I don't know. Maybe they thought that no one would notice. There's just not a whole lot of information for something that requires a lot of information, you know? And on top of that, she doesn't, like, the name doesn't really fit, because you want to know what she's the goddess of? Plowing, prosperity, fertility, and she's also a virgin goddess. So basically, she's a harvest goddess. Like, and I say the word virgin very lightly here, because thanks to the Prose Edda, we know that her 4 sons were oxen. Jotun oxen, guys. They don't have names, they are nameless. But the old king of Sweden, Gilif, gifted her land, as much as 4 oxen could plow by sunrise. So what did she do? She took her 4 sons, all Jotun, and used them to plow what was once called Zealand. Yeah. Apparently New Zealand wasn't just a name, bro. It was based off of an old Zealand. But Zealand, that bit of land, is now called Lake Malar in Sweden. So there's a lake out there with some backstory of a lesser known god. It's quite interesting. Loki said, Gefjon said, "Why should you two Aesir in here fight with wounding words? Isn't it known of Loki that he likes a joke and all the gods love him?" Loki said, "Be silent, Gefjon. I'm going to mention this. How your spirit was seduced. The white boy gave you a jewel and you laid your thigh over him." Basically called her a whore, even though it's a lie. At least I'm assuming it's a lie. Everywhere out there I've read says, you know, she's a virgin goddess. So, and Loki lies. Odin said, "Mad you are, Loki, and out of your wits." I'm gonna change this. "When you make Gefjon angry with you, for I think she knows all the fate of the world as clearly as I myself." I'm going to change the music. Loki said, "Be silent, Odin. You could never apportion war fortune among men. Often you've given what you shouldn't have given, victory to the faint-hearted." Odin said, "You know, if I gave what I shouldn't have given, victory to the faint-hearted, yet 8 winters you were beneath this earth, a milk cow and a woman, and there you bore children, and that I thought the hallmark of a pervert." It's calling Loki a man whore. I'm supposed to keep this PG-13, and I'm gonna have to cut some things out. Loki said, "But you, they say, practice seed on Samsi." Magic. So the thing here is Odin made fun of Loki for dressing like a woman when he had done the same, and Loki is calling him out on his shit. "And you beat on the drum as seeresses do. In the likeness of a wizard, you've journeyed over mankind, and that I thought the hallmark of a pervert." Frigg said, "The fates you met should never be told in front of people, what you two Aesir underwent in past times. The living should keep their distance from ancient matters." Telling Loki and Odin, you know, the past is a past, kind of leave it be. Loki said, "Be silent, Frigg. You're Fjorgen's daughter, and you've always been man-mad. Ve and Vili, Virdr's wife, you took them both in your embrace." Frigg said, "You know that if I had in here Aegir's son, a boy like my son Balder, you wouldn't get away from the Aesir's sons. There'd be furious fighting against you." Loki said, "Frigg, you want me to say more about my wicked deeds, for I brought it about that you will never again see Balder ride to the halls." Freya said, "Mad are you, Loki, when you reckon upon your ugly, hateful deeds. Frigg knows, I think, all fate, though she herself does not speak out." Loki said, "Be silent, Freya. I know all about you. You aren't free of faults. Of the Aesir and the elves here who are in here, each one has been your lover." Freya said, "False is your tongue. I think that soon it will chant out disaster for you. The Aesir are furious with you, and the Aesinor, you'll go home discomfited." Loki said, "Be silent, Freya. You're a witch, and much imbued with malice. You were with your brother, all the cheerful gods surprised you, and then Freya..." Oh, I forgot that this line was in here. "Freya, you farted." Basically saying she had a moment. She had a moment of embarrassment. Njord said, "That's harmless. If a woman has a husband or a lover or one of each, what's surprising is that a pervert god comes in here and he has born children." Yeah, apparently you're not a pervert unless you have children with the one you slept with. Anyways, Njord's in here. Njord is also one of my favorite minor gods. He is of one of the Vanir. And though minor, he does have actually quite a bit of backstory and lore to him. I know a lot about this god. Childbearing is very perverse indeed. And, you know, he himself has had children. Sleipnir exists, you know, the 8-legged horse exists. So yeah, no, I know a decent amount Njord. He's the god of seafaring, wealth, fortune, and rain. Basically, if you were a fisherman or a farmer, you either prayed for rain or for no rain. You wanted him to give you a bounty. And he's definitely one of the gods that you want on your side during a harvest, especially. But if it wasn't made clear during his interjection, he's also the father of Freya and Freyr. Imagine the PG-13 next. PG-13. So Njord actually had such a profounding impact upon his followers that even though there was a lot of worship wiped out by the by Christianity and Catholicism, his followers worshipped him until about the 18th or 19th century. If you had a good bounty come in from fishing, they would praise him. I see a lot of ums in this. Anyways, so the most interesting thing, and this is something that I keep meaning to look into, but I keep forgetting, is the Aesir and Vanir War. The Aesir and Vanir War ended with a peace treaty, quite obviously, but Njord was a hostage piece given to the Aesir during the treaty. And he's still not very happy about it, and less happy about being married to the giantess Gotti. God of wealth, harvest, seafaring, and rain and fortune. You'd think that he'd be a very happy man, but he's gone through a lot. Loki said, "Be silent, Njord. You were sent here from eastwards as a hostage to the gods. The daughters of Hymir used you as a piss pot and pissed in your mouth." There's no way this is making it onto YouTube, guys. Njord said, "That was my comfort when I, from far away, was sent as hostage to the gods, that I fathered that son whom no one hates, and is thought the protector of the Aesir." I'm trying to keep it PG-13, Nix. Loki said, "Stop now, Njord. Keep some moderation. I won't keep it a secret any longer. With your sister, you got that son, though that's no worse than might be expected." Tyr said, "Freyr is the best of all bold riders. In the courts of the Aesir, he makes no girl cry, nor any man's wife, and looses each man from captivity." Loki said, "Be silent, Tyr. You could never deal straight between two people. Your right hand, I must point out, is the one which Fenrir tore from you." Kind of giving a soft spot at, his son being bound in chains. And Tyr said, "I've lost the hand, but you've lost the famous wolf. Evil brings pain to us both. It's not pleasant for the wolf who must in shackles wait for the twilight of the gods." Loki said, "Be silent, Tyr. It happened that your wife had a son by me. Not an ell of cloth, not a penny have you ever had for this injury, you wretch." The vengeance of tying up his own son. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna chain my son. Your wife's now gonna give me one." Freyr said, "A wolf I see lying before a river mouth until the powers are torn asunder, and next you shall be bound unless you fall silent, smith of evil." Again, Freyr saw what's coming to Loki. Loki said, "With gold you had Gymir's daughter bought, and so you gave away your sword when Muspel's sons ride over Mirkwood. You don't know then, wretch, how you'll fight." I will go over this at a later date, but to recap, Freyr is absolutely smitten with his wife. He loves his wife so much. Bigvir said, if I had the lineage of Freyr and such a blessed dwelling, smaller than marrow, I'd have ground that hateful crow and mangled all his limbs to pieces." This is Bigvir. Now, Bigvir is a servant of Freyr, and normally I wouldn't bring up someone so small. He doesn't have a lot going on for him, but he is basically Freyr's lapdog. he sent messages between Freyr and his wife, his now wife, been like, hey, he adores you. He's Freyr's wingman, right? And he's also in God of War. Just wanted to point that out. He actually does have a bit of an impact when it comes to Freyr, that he ended up in one of the biggest video games of mythology. Yeah. Turns out the studio wasn't just slapping characters in there. Loki said, "What's that little creature I see wagging its tail and snapping things up snappily? At Freyr's ears you're always found, and twittering under the grindstones." Bigvir said, "Bigvir I'm called, and I'm said to be busy by all gods and men, thus I'm proud here that Odin's son are all drinking ale together." Loki said, "Be silent, Bigvir. You could never share out food among men, and in the bench straw they can never find you when men are going to fight." He has no name. Heimdall said, "Drunk you are, Loki, so that you're out of your wits. Why don't you stop speaking? For too much drinking affects every man, so he doesn't notice his talkativeness." Loki said, "Be silent, Heimdall. For you in bygone days, a hateful life was decreed. A mucky back you must always have, and watch as guard of the gods." Skadi said, "You're light-hearted, Loki. You won't for long. Play with your tail wagging free, for on a rock edge with your ice-cold son's guts, the gods shall bind you." Oh, Skadi. So, Skadi, like I said, is Njord's wife, a giantess that he is not really happy to be married to. Now, I won't touch really on her here, since there's actually quite a bit about her in terms of origin, worship, even the winter. You even got like winter stories that people would tell. There's a lot. We would be here for a while. But yeah, no, I do actually quite enjoy her origins and her role in winter life, so I'm gonna bookmark this one. We will talk about her later, at a later date. Loki said, "You know, if on a rock edge with my ice-cold son's guts, the gods shall bind me. First and foremost, I was at the killing when we seized Tyzi." Skadi said, "You know, if first and foremost you're at the killing when you seized Tyzi, from my sanctuaries and Meadow's cold counsel shall always come to you." Loki said, "Gentler in speech your word, Alafi, son, when you have invited me to your bed. We must mention such things when we reckon up our shameful deeds." Yeah. Then Sif went forward and poured out mead for Loki into a crystal goblet and said, "Guidelines for PG-13. I know." I'm aware. Then Sif went forward and poured out mead for Loki into a crystal goblet and said, "Welcome now, Loki, and take the crystal goblet full of ancient mead. You should rather admit of the Aesir's children that Sif alone is blameless." He took the horn and drank it down. "You would be the only one if you were so. We're cautious and reluctant with the man. I know one, and I think I do know a lover besides Thor, and that was the malevolent Loki." Bela said, "All the mountain range shakes. I think Thor must be on his way from home. He'll bring peace to the one who badmouths here all the gods and men." Sif? The same as Skadi. Sif is more minor and more of a plot point in a lot of stories, especially with how Thor got Mjolnir. There's enough to go off of that they gave her a fairly prominent character in God of War. Like, just saying, there's actually a lot to go off of that I could cover in a different video. Be silent, Bela, you are Bigvir's wife, and much imbued with malice. No worse disgrace came among the Aesir's children, you dung-splattered dairy maid. Then Thor arrived and said, Be silent, perverse creature. My mighty hammer Mjolnir shall deprive you of speech. Your shoulder rock I shall strike off your neck, and then your life will be gone. Loki said, The son of Earth has now come in. Why are you raging so, Thor? But you won't be daring when you fight against the wolf when he swallows Odin all up. Thor said, Be silent, perverse creature. My mighty hammer Mjolnir shall deprive you of speech. I shall throw you up on the roads to the east. Afterwards, no one will ever see you. Loki said, Your eastern journeys you should never relate to people, since in the thumb of a glove you crouched cowering, you hero, and then you didn't seem like Thor. Thor said, Be silent, perverse creature. My mighty hammer Mjolnir shall deprive you of speech. With my right hand I'll strike you with Hrungnir's killer so that every one of your bones will break. Loki said, I intend to live for a good time yet, though you threaten me with the hammer. Strong leather straps you thought Skrimir had, and you couldn't get at the food, and you starved, unharmed but hungry. Thor said, Be silent, perverse creature. My mighty hammer Mjolnir shall deprive you of speech. Hrungnir's killer will send you to hell, down below the corpse gate. Loki said, I spoke before the Aesir. I spoke before the Aesir's sons, what my spirit urged me. But for you alone I shall go out, for I know that you do strike. Ill you brood, Aegir, but you'll never again prepare a feast. All your possessions that are here inside may flame play over them, and your back be burnt. And after that, Loki hid himself in the waterfall of Hrungnir in the shape of a salmon. There the Aesir caught him. He was bound with his guts of his son Nari, but his son Narfi turned into a wolf. Skadi took a poisonous snake and fastened it over Loki's face, poison dripping down from it. Sigyn, Loki's current wife, sat there and held a basin under the poison, but when the basin was full, she carried the poison out, and meanwhile the poison fell on Loki. Then he writhed so violently all the earth shook from it, and those are now called earthquakes. And that is Loki's quarrel. Just a small introduction to some of the minor gods in Nordic mythology. I'm certain I'll dive into them again later. And this time includes Skadi and Sif. Though I really do have to be careful with hot giant women on my channel. You know, the community gets a little way too into that, and I'm also very guilty of such. Yeah. But that is it. That is story time with Desi. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want at a later time, but that's what we got. If you guys have any suggestions, I shall put up a channel for it. I told you it was gonna be short, and I feel really weird signing off 30 minutes in. But I prepared just enough for this. Oh, excuse me. For it to be a good introduction video to edit. Oh, it could be whatever next. Like I put up polls on Twitter. But yes. And that is it for tonight, everybody. So have a good night. And sweet dreams. I shall see you guys all again on Tuesday. And next, I'll put up the polls in Discord. The problem is I don't have as many people on Discord as I do Twitter. Anyways, good night, everybody.